Poverty in Dollars, What Are We Missing? By Liam and Kendall. OPM is the official poverty measure. It is an absolute measure of poverty that takes into account only gross annual income before the tax income of a family. Thresholds are determined by 3 times the food index needed for a basic food basket cost in 1963. Those below certain thresholds will receive government benefits to help lift them out of poverty. The OPM does account for inflation. It does not take into account, however, the cost of living. Food is no longer the main expense. Housing, clothing, and utilities are rising in percentage of spending among families. The National Academy of Science proposed a supplemental poverty measure, SPM, in an attempt to measure who is really in poverty. The SPM measures income plus in-kind benefits and near-cash benefits and subtracts the work-related and out-of-pocket medical expenses of a family. SPM measures everyone's spending on FCSU, which is food, clothing, shelter, and utilities, and finds a 33rd percentile spending. It will then multiply this amount by 1.2 to allow for some additional funds. This final number is a threshold that they have established. This threshold is updated every 5 years to account for changes in living and spending patterns. The SPM is also adjusted geographically to account for different living expenses in different areas. Because these are the 2 measures of poverty used by the government and therefore policymakers, what does this say about what we believe poverty is? Both of these measurements lead to the belief that poverty is a form of income lowness. Given that it is measured in dollars, and that shows people that they believe that poverty is simply a lack of such dollars. This falls under what is called the fallacy of measurement. This is the falsely held belief that something, poverty, must be defined in terms that it can be measured, money. If it is defined by a lack of money, finding those lacking the necessary amount can be quantified. However, poverty can be so much more than just a lack of money. There are other ways to measure if someone is lacking in what can be termed capabilities, a way to live a dignified life. The OPM specifically does not account for different costs of living throughout the years and through different geological regions. It also is absolute, so it does not measure the depth of poverty. It only measures on a binary scale. The SPM is also binary and also cannot account for how far into poverty people are. Additionally, because the SPM measures near cash and in-kind benefits, it could not be used to determine who needs such programs without risking a paradoxical dilemma. Another possibility is to measure the GDP or GNP for a country. While this does give us some information about the country's wealth, it leaves us in the dark when concerning the distribution of wealth. We have no idea if the wealthy continue to get wealthier instead of distributing the money throughout everyone. Another way to define poverty, or just the well-being of an individual, is to measure what his or her capabilities in life are. That is, what a person can and cannot do. For example, nourishing oneself, having a family, collaborating with others, working, or maintaining one's health. These capabilities can be chosen from, and what is actually done by a person is his or her functioning. For example, if 2 individuals are starving, that is their functionings. However, if one of the 2 is fasting for a religious holiday, he or she has the capability to be nourished, but chooses not to be. Conversely, if the other does not have the means to properly nourish himself or herself, he or she does not have the capability to be nourished. In this example, the first individual would not be considered poor, while the second would. Many people have theorized about what capabilities matter and how to define them in terms of what is poverty. Amartya recognizes that policies are based on what is easily measurable, but he believes that how we define poverty should go beyond that. It should not just be an easily measured income, but it should be what would amount to a serious deprivation of human life. He believes that we should be defining poverty as a failure of basic capabilities to reach some minimal level. Sen believes that everyone should have the ability to choose among a set of functionings, and that in that set of functionings, everyone should have the ability to have his or her basic needs met. But what are the basic needs that should be met? Amartya recognizes that the basic capabilities set for a person not to be in poverty will differ across regions. In poorer countries, one's basic needs may be all that is needed to not to be physically impoverished. But in a more affluent country, an individual may need more than what is the basic capabilities to be included in society. Just because someone has enough basic capabilities to nourish, clothe, and house him or herself, and those who depend on them, that does not mean that they can be functioning members of society. If this family cannot go out on the street without being ridiculed by others, they do not have the capability to live a social life and therefore cannot have a dignified life. This example highlights what the SPM and the OPM have been missing throughout the years of measuring income. There is more to living a dignified life than simply having sufficient income to pay for the basic necessities. Martha Nussbaum says that there are 10 central capabilities that every human needs to live a dignified life. These are life, the ability to have a lengthy life without premature death; bodily health, which is having good health from diseases and nourishment, shelter, and the ability to reproduce; bodily integrity, which is being able to move around safely and having protection from violent or sexual assaults; senses, imagination, and thought, which is having the cognitive process to think critically, perceive the world in a conscious way, and have the ability to use your imagination and connect thoughts with one's own mind; emotion, which is the ability to form attachments and to experience interpersonal connections and in form of relationships in a healthy way; practical reason, which is the ability to form morals and act on them, to be able to critically think about one's good and bad and make assessments and judgment about one's own life in said context; affiliation, which is both being able to live with others and interact in a socially healthy manner, as well as being able to show and be shown social respect such that there is an absence of discrimination; other species, which is being able to live in harmony with nature and respect all other life on this earth; play, which is the ability to laugh and have fun in one's own free time; and control over one's environment, which is being both able to participate in political practice so that laws are made and affect the people, as well as equality and the ability to land or seek out a job. These central capabilities seem to be vital for one to lead a dignified life, but we believe that there is a simpler way to define poverty. While these 10 are all essential, they can be condensed into 3 more broad categories, which we will call the 3 fundamental capabilities. The first we will define as health, which will encompass the first 3 of Nussbaum's 10 central capabilities. The ability to live a prosperous life, to be healthy, and to have bodily integrity can all be encompassed into the capability to be healthy. Senses, imagination, and thought, emotion, and practical reason can all be condensed into what we will define as free-mindedness. The ability to think and feel freely, to critically reason and perceive the world in a unique way has all of the aforementioned qualities and is a necessity for basic dignity. Finally, we will define the remaining capabilities as harmony. That is, the ability to live and play with others, interact socially with the people in a community and environment. Environment in this context contains both the nature of the world and the human environment, politically and materially, as Nussbaum defines them. Anyone with an inadequacy to satisfy these 3 fundamentals will be considered poor, and thus should be the subject of benefits to support their ability to live a dignified life. Now that we have our definition, there is the issue of measurement. While measuring capabilities may be extremely subjective and difficult, we feel that the 3 fundamental capabilities are simplified in such a way that all humans can grasp the need for each one of them. The inability to reach an absolute threshold, such that an individual does not have the capability to satisfy any one of the 3 fundamentals, will be considered poverty.